So, a new graph just dropped, boys, on new statistics, which is the Office for National Statistics. Which I will be honest, hand on heart, I am actually quite proud of British statistics. Like the ONS is very good at keeping statistics and gathering them and being able to use them. But they also make predictions. And these predictions are based on reality, regardless of political promises, which is quite revealing because, of course, we're talking about immigration.
Are the ONS the only part of the British government that still does the job it's supposed to?
Functions, yes.
Yeah, I think that's telling.
We do know that it is nowadays politically problematic to notice things and make predictions based on reality, isn't it?
Yeah, but the ONS still gathers the data for now. So, I mean, maybe in 10 years. I mean, they were thinking of destroying the 2020 census, if you remember.
There's one somehow 200 years old holdover from the Victorian era still collecting data
hordes
for
of
ONS somehow.
So this is a crappy graph because I made the end bits there, but this is a graph of net migration into the UK. This is from the ONS, of course, and this being a huge problem. You're all aware, I'm sure. Well, anyway, the ONS decided to update us and tell us that it's going to get worse, boys, before it changes. So this is them tweeting. This wasn't asked for by anyone. They just decided to tweet out a bunch of predictions. And they say here, between mid-2021 and mid-2036, the projections for the UK as a whole suggest that 10.8 million people will be born, 10.3 million people will die, 13.7 million people will immigrate long-term to the UK, and 7.6 million people will emigrate long-term to the UK.
So what's that official statistic? 6.6 million extra on top?
Over 15 years there.
Over 15 years. And that's not including any people who overstay visas, illegal entrance into the country, people that we just lose track of.
Yeah. And of course, this comes at a time in which they tell us, or at least the political parties tell us that, oh, terribly sorry, yes, we got all that wrong. Vote for us this time. We'll change it. The Labour and the Conservatives here, of course. Which, this kind of betrays them publicly, doesn't it? That your own Office for National Statistics is outing you as, no, mass migration will continue. And it will not stop. Like, okay. But I mean, I'm glad we can at least trust one source.
There must be some kind of rogue British nationalist who's controlling the ONS and releasing these statistics. Why else would they release them? Unless, of course, the Tories are proud of this and see this as some form of progress. We are replacing you in your own home country. Aren't we a good job, says our Indian Prime Minister.
That's such a backwards way of looking at statistics, right? Like there's a MAGA guy secretly running the FBI counts. It's like, yeah, no, the statistics must be wrong, not me. Okay. But yeah, the reality in terms of, added data does match up with nationalist perspectives on this issue. And one thing I do want to note in this before we go forwards is that you remember the endless argument for mass immigration is we don't have enough births. I don't know if you guys noticed. There's 500,000 more people born in that time period than die.
They will presumably be including the immigrant populations within those figures.
Absolutely, but even with that, then you've killed the argument for mass immigration.
I suppose so.
We have more births than deaths. You know, your pyramid scheme, the pensions, that could still work. But no, that argument isn't relevant anymore. It's just 13 more million people, please.
Well, I imagine they're banking on the idea that of those 10.8 million people, a fair number of them will eventually return to the homeland and be part of the 7.6 emigration figure sometime in the future. So they think, well, English people probably wouldn't move, but, some people.
That's us going to Australia. Let's be frank.
Oh, yeah, that is a lot of us going to Australia as well.
I think it's really important that we have huge diversity in restaurants. That's.
I've seen Will Stansel arguing about this on Twitter.
It's one of the key things for me. I mean, despite the fact we've got the recipes, so we don't need the millions of people. But I think if we have 6.6 extra million people, then, we can have one or two more Ethiopian-themed restaurants.
Well, if we tried to cook them ourselves...
So that's worth it.
We just aren't... The logic to me would suggest that we just aren't genetically built to make ethnic food, are we? We have to, which is an interesting kind of ethnic determinism, but okay.
I've never been to an Ethiopian restaurant. I'm trying to think if I've ever even seen one.
I've seen Ethiopian slop start to appear on my Twitter timeline, and it doesn't look appetizing.
Isn't there one? There's one right near here on the corner near the Ibis Hotel that's been filled with economic migrants.
That's West African food.
Oh, is it?
It's not.
Oh, it's West African. Oh no, not that place. Another place.
There's a new one.
Maybe it's
Kenyan
like
butchers.
maybe it's
Popping up everywhere.
actually. I think maybe it's Yemeni or Oman type food, not Ethiopia. But,
Well, we'll have to, if we're going to have the diversity, might as well eat there.
yeah.
But no, the responses to this were not fun. I mean, everyone, as you can see in the public comments, were a bit miffed, to say the least. Lots of reform people, obviously, being like, oh, yeah. So literally, if you don't get a new party in that isn't the ones that have already been in, you will just get continuously replaced. I mean, that's what that promise is there. 7 million Britons will leave, and you will get 13 million foreigners. That's a huge number for an island of 60 million people.
So on the immigration issue, now we've got this image up on. So that's Rick from the old Porn Stars TV show. Did you see what happened to not one of his sons who's involved in the show, but one of his other sons? One of his other sons, speaking of immigration, OD'd and died recently on fentanyl. Yeah. So unlimited range of incredible restaurants, guys.
Think of the drugs we could have.
What would Rick have done without all of that Mexican food flooding into Las Vegas?
But this is about, because I kind of hate how the Conservatives focus on the boat people, because obviously the bigger factor is the mass migration. And this is a nice reveal of what will happen if those people get into power again. And what's interesting is that number, because you don't think about it that much. But this guy tweeted a great example. To put this into perspective, 13.7 million migrants clears the combined population of Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, including the migrants in those countries, with enough people left over to fill an extra Wales. You could literally, well, have more people than every Celt on Earth in that time period. So yeah, you could actually completely empty out the Celtic nations.
And when you put it in terms like that, the use of any terms like minorities that gets used is rather perverse, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, the BBC did a thing on this where they just start off, because whenever they have to talk about this, usually they just mention figures and don't want to have a further conversation because, well, duh. What's the conclusion going to be? This is probably a bad idea. And in this, they decided to actually instead interview some politicians. So I wanted to get their words because I think they'll piss you off if nothing else. So the chairman for the Conservative Party said that I've been clear that migration is too high and we must get back to sustainable levels. Such as 13 million over 15 years.
Yeah, liar.
Yeah.
Liar. Don't care about what you've got to say anymore.
The Minister for Legal Migration said that measures would be made to make a tangible difference and show that the government was acting in response to the sorts of figures.
Liar.
Because this is the thing, like the ONS have released what will happen, and then there's whatever the fuck you say, and no one cares. Because again, I mean, you're so right. The Labour Party put out a statement. They said that they would reform the points-based immigration system to boost training and better link it to the needs of the economy.
That sounds to me just like they said that, yeah, we'll lean into it more, if anything.
Why not?
That's all that is.
They are all doctors and engineers. But the funny thing in all this is I did notice a new conversation. Caps. I ain't seen this before. So calls for a cap is the headline here.
That's been a thing. That used to be a thing.
Did it?
Yeah. Back in the day, and I mean like the 50s and 60s and 70s and stuff. We'll have a cap. Even David Cameron sometimes used to talk about having a cap.
He used to say there was a target of target of tens of thousands, not hundreds of thousands.
Yeah.
And then that was phrased as a cap back in the day. But
well, they've never
maybe
had
he did.
one.
Yeah. But the statement here is that Downing Street is resisting calls from the former Home Secretary Suella Braverman for a cap. Really? So there we are.
Yeah.
That's their opinion. So let's go and check out what's been going on, because Suella Braverman did respond, just being upset. She's like, well, this is mad, which, fair enough. I mean, most people just don't really pay attention anymore because, I mean, you were Home Secretary.
Yeah.
So
I don't buy any of her, anything she's doing or saying. I don't buy it. It's all just performative nonsense to try and keep her seat. Now, she had a chance. She was Home Secretary. She was at the top of government in cabinet for a few years there, and was absolutely part of the problem. To me, her phony ire, she can stick it. I'm not interested in hearing it.
Well, there was the Telegraph article that got released of the insider, the anonymous insider from the Home Office, who was kind of blowing the whistle on the whole thing, saying that the Home Office, they all hate the public, they don't want to do what the public wants them to do. And whenever Suella Braverman would come in and say, listen, guys, it's time that we start kicking some people back and closing these borders a bit, actually doing what we said they would, they would turn around and say, "No, we're not going to do that," and she would be very apologetic for having asked in the first place.
Right, yeah.
So who?
Yes, I've got no sympathy for her. It's your job as minister to make a department do what the government wants it to do. That's your job. You don't just go, "Can you do that, please?" Or you won't. Oh well, then.
Yeah, well, we do pay you over 100.
That's not leadership. That's not being in. That's not doing anything. Ugh.
So there we are. That's I suppose outside establishment position. I don't know what to call it. The MPs for the ruling party that have done this, who are like, I resigned because it was so bad. I was like,
Maybe
I
if
don't really
you'd
care.
done something,
yeah. So
that would have been better.
I have no interest in serving the Conservative Party.
That is so indicative of the Tory attitude towards things. Oh, we failed at something? Well, then I quit. Okay, great. Fantastic. Good job.
Hi, folks. Sorry to interrupt the video, but I just wanted to announce that we have a new line of merch in our merch store. The merch store was kind of empty for a while, and so I thought, right, okay, what do I actually want on shirts? And so I just went through some of the most epic and true things that I think that historical people have said, and John managed to make an amazing set of merch out of it. And we will have extra things coming in the store, such as posters for these to go on. Thanks for everything, folks. Now back to the video.
But the larger conversation, I think, was the funnier one. So someone came out and said, could someone please think of the houses? The real problem, of course, is the house... yeah, okay. That's roughly 254,000 homes a year just to accommodate the new arrivals, and 210,000 dwellings were completed last year. Madness on stilts, this guy says, which I appreciate the house concern as a man who doesn't own a house, but at the same time, it's not my biggest concern. What's the point of buying a house in a neighborhood if that neighborhood isn't the same by the time I've paid off the mortgage? If I now live on a foreign land at the end of that 25-year
Or even
period?
by the time that the rest of the neighborhood is built.
Yes. So, yeah, I don't really care for building endless houses if I still live in somewhere that's not England, because that's kind of what I wanted to invest all that money in. But never mind. There are a list of countries that are bigger than the expected immigration, which you can find your own time. Starts at Belgium. So we're going to take an entire Belgium, or an entire Greece, or an entire Portugal, or, you could take a couple of Denmarks, a couple of Finlands, take your pick.
2 Norways.
Yeah.
If we had to take 13.7 million people, I'd much rather them be 2 Swedens, 2 Norways, something
10
like that.
Estonias.
Yeah, if we were forced, if I had a gun to my head and said, you have to take 13.7, where do you want them coming from? I'd say,
Never how it works.
Iceland, Norway, the nice countries filled with nice people.
No, you never get that option. But there we are, just to give a perspective about how just insane this is. Because, I mean, the UK is one of the most densely populated places on Earth. And it's like, yeah, just have 12 more Estonias. Where? What are you talking about? Mad. So there's lots of feels about this. This was mine when I first saw this data. Just local man who's had enough. But then there are proposals, of course, because just being downy is not a way to fix anything. So, here's a proposal.
I don't know, I'd be a lot happier if I was Downey.
Well, here's a proposal from a local man. Mass immigration, but in reverse. I mean, it's a policy.
Clever.
Certainly a policy. But I did check out a local man who had his thinking hat on, which really gets you into the mindset of what's needed. This chap. Reversing this must be done with the exact cold disregard for human suffering and democratic norms shown throughout, or it will not happen. Steel yourselves. Which is kind of funny, because of course the man is being quite hardline. But he makes a brilliant point, which is that this was done entirely undemocratically and with a cold disregard for human suffering of the English.
Yeah, we were never asked. I feel like if they came here against our will, they can go back against theirs then. No,
There's no moral argument.
Forced remigration.
Because there just is no moral argument on this. There was no moral argument to bring them here. I mean, these further 13 million.
Well, we know
So,
large-scale deportation campaigns have been done in the past before we had access
many
to the
times.
great range of technology that we have at the moment. In the 1950s, Eisenhower dispelled loads of illegal Mexicans from America, for instance.
Didn't Pakistan deport 250,000 or 500,000 people like last
week.
month?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In about a month's span, they got rid of 250,000.
Oh, right.
So,
So if you want to do it, if there's political will to do it, it can be done.
easily.
There's all
With the
sorts
resources of
precedents.
Pakistan. The average wealth of $200 a month.
I think, to be fair, I think the leaders of Pakistan have something that our leaders don't, which is a semblance of a backbone.
So that's the
Sadly.
point this chap's getting at there. Just to check in on everyone. So Nigel Farage, he was upset publicly. There you are. He said many millions will move here that we have nothing culturally, historically, and literally in common with. And I believe that the implications of that on our society will be very serious. Well, yes.
Well,
Good to stop it.
not even just that actively see us as the enemy
Yep.
and group themselves together and behave in their own interests.
So, I mean, there's not a small number of problems come out of it. And what is hilarious is that number of 1 million a year came out previous year, I think it was. And of course, British politics, I'm sure you guys can sense it, has radicalized on this issue because they're just like, oh, well, no, we can't go down this path. This will actually ruin us within 5 to 10 years. And irreversibly so if you go down that path. Because, of course, these people, if you just check out political data, well, they're also imported for a political cause, which is to displace the natives on political lines. Because if you can give them the right to vote, which is Labour and Green Party policy, well, they 90% vote for the Labour Party. So you will never get your nation back. Because if it's one man, one vote, and we import 13 million, bye, you've lost all your political power. So,
Well, eventually, I would have thought, and I think there's precedents for this all over the world in all sorts of times, is that once they've got a big enough body of people, they just create their own party. So there'll be like a UK Hindu party or a UK.
all the Conservatives.
But eventually, even that host will be
Yeah.
the parasite will outgrow the host. Even.
So that
there'll be like a pro Sharia party, and all the Muslims vote for it, and suddenly it's a political power.
So this has happened, I think, in every Western nation now. There's an Islam party in Belgium. There was one that was growing out of the Labour Party for a small period, and then it hasn't kicked off yet. But absolutely.
Or there'll be one that's just like say, we've got quite a lot of Turkish people coming here, don't we? Like there'll be a pro-Turk party,
Mm.
and they'll sort of all vote for it. And if they've got 5 million, 10 million people,
It's quite,
especially if they're in enclaves as well, so they will return people to Parliament that way.
ethnic parties are really weird and are all around the world as well. It's actually quite unusual that they're not more common in the West. Because I'm thinking, I can't remember if it's Poland or some of the nations next to Turkey, but a bunch of them have small minorities and then political parties that literally just represent them, like the German Minority Party and weird stuff like that. So,
Well, I don't know if it's potentially illegal to explicitly do it in the UK because of the Equalities Act. So they would have to wrap it up in some kind of.
Yeah. we're open to all members,
Yeah.
but yeah,
We're open to all members as long as you're in favour of Sharia.
Yeah. So he's a way of
That
sorting it.
narrows it down a little bit. But of course, if you were to start a party that explicitly said, we are for the interests of the native British people, then you would get the hammer down on you.
Okay, we're being told there's a problem with the chat.
There's
So I do have to move on just for the sake of
Okay,
time, sorry.
alright.
But yeah, the ONS data, which we've touted a lot, yeah, that's already out of date. Will be out of date very soon. A ridiculous amount, just keep in mind.
Yeah.
And moving on. A reminder that this is what the country actually looks like. Because, of course, the ONS is saying what will happen if the Conservatives or Labour get in. But when you go and ask the public, what do you think on the issue of immigration? The blue constituents in here are those saying reduce the numbers and tighten controls, which is basically everyone. So, what do you want? And then there's the question of what Britain will look like. So this is Matt Goodwin. He's made a graph with that data. As you can see here, the blue line is the net births over to 2050, and the red line is net migration. So, yeah, I mean, the word replacement used to be a bit taboo, but then it just became government policy. I mean, factually, when they're just saying, yes, 7 million of you will leave and we will import 13 million, that's just a 2035 there.
Well, it is a demographic suicide, is what it is. It's suicidal.
And the other responses from this I didn't understand is that there are still some people who don't understand why we don't want to die for this. So this is Colin Brazier here, who's responding to that poll about whether or not you'd go for conscription. And he says a quarter of British men would rather submit to the UK's takeover by hostile power than take up arms. And he's disappointed by this. And just everyone in the comments is like, well, yeah. What are you talking about? What are we defending?
Yeah.
So, I mean, the kind of settlement we have here is very similar to the West Bank at this point. So, what do you expect? But, yeah, the MSM response is to waste time on crap like this instead.
Oh no, microaggressions.
Yeah, this is a clip in which BBC Newsnight is spending their time talking about microaggressions. And the reason I even bring this up is not just because random thing, but most of the responses were from feminist types, like Posey Parker. Don't even call themselves feminists, to be fair. But they're all just like, no, fix the borders. That's where all the
Yeah.
sexual assault coming from en masse because of a recent event, which I bring up another time. I
They
suppose.
always say that, don't they? Say something like anti-Semitic attacks are on the rise, or something like,
Yeah, by who?
right, exactly. Yeah, the amount of war memorials that have been desecrated is on the rise. The amount of Jewish graves that have been desecrated is on the rise. The amount of just rape, the amount of acid attacks is on the rise. Just the native white men of England have become significantly more insane.
Well, what's happened
Have
is
we?
that there's a floating abstract notion of anti-Semitism floating through the air that's just happened to rise, and Jewish people are feeling the sting. No, there are concrete people doing this, flesh and blood people.
They are on camera outside the Holocaust Museum in Germany shouting, Adolf Hitler, you were right. We have them on camera doing it, and you look at them, and they're not very German.
That would be
They don't really
hilarious.
speak German. They're shouting that part in English, for example.
That would be hilarious if the camera somehow just had speakers and started to blast that out of nowhere.
So you're entirely correct. It's not the guys in the country pub who have suddenly started
suddenly become
honor
like,
killings.
It's like Sweden going from one of the least rapey places to one of the most rapey places in the space of 5 or 10 years. Or they're
All that
sort of
pickled herring, I tell you.
Yeah. Or the amount of grenade attacks have gone from 0 to the most in Europe in the same period. It's like, Swedish men have just suddenly become much more grenadey and rapey out of nowhere, have they? Okay, all right. That's
How
what's
does
happened.
people become more grenadey?
They just love their grenades. The Swedes, the native Swedes just love grenade
It's
attacks.
China. China's been flooding Sweden with grenades, clearly.
They go for their fika, and they get yourself a little bit of coffee and a cinnamon bun, and who doesn't want to go for a grenade attack after that? Nobody. Everyone wants to sit down. You've just had a cinnamon.
I remember as a boy playing Pass the Grenade with my friend. Oh, good times.
I'll end this off on something rather funny, I think, which is this went viral recently, which is a video from Nas Daily, who is a personal favorite of mine because he makes content, as I've said before, for people who are actually retarded. And I'm not being mean. Like, genuinely, you watch the content and you realize, oh, God. Like, who is watching this stuff? Because it's so basic. It's the kind of thing you just find endlessly with 10 million views on Facebook. And you think, are kids watching this? Like, how is this watchable? But one of his employees decided to make one about Iceland. Yeah, you know where this is going.
Yeah.
We
Why
found a
is
country
Iceland
that
so
is
safe?
so safe. They have 0 military, 0 nuclear weapons, and almost 0 crime. But how? To answer that, we have to take you to the country of... See, it's so safe here that parents leave their babies outside to nap alone. Because parents trust the community to keep their baby safe.
The babies tend to sleep a lot better outside.
The police do not carry guns because they don't need them. Everyone helps keep the streets safe.
Iceland is a small country with a good social networking, and hopefully we're not going to carry guns in the future.
Even the prisoners get keys to their own cell because they are trusted to do the right thing. See, Iceland was ranked the world's safest country for the past 15 years. And it's not because they skipped the nuclear weapons. It's because everyone keeps it safe.
Because Iceland is a small country and everybody knows everybody.
So if you want a safe country, skip the borders and the guns. Instead, become friends with your neighbor. That's what.
Yep, it's just no guns, no nukes, and magic soil.
You notice she never mentioned anything about immigrants, but at the end there came up with, get rid of the borders. What? Wasn't even relevant to the discussion.
Yep.
But yeah.
I mean, even if you wanted to say that Iceland has like no borders or something, it's kind of got natural borders.
The best ones.
Called the ocean.
The North Sea.
Yeah.
You want to go swimming in the North Sea.
And it's also got another layer of protection, which is it's freezing cold half the year round, which is not the most popular destination for some of the visitors that we're getting.
So for some reason they have, statistically, if you're rounded to the nearest percent, I think it is 0%, not even 1%.
Nice.
Someone fact check me on that. It might be 1%.
I'm pretty sure in Iceland they do have guns. It's just not a gun there's not loads of homicides due
Yeah.
to guns. It's like, for example, there's loads of countries like, I think Norway or Canada, for example, countries where there's a massive load of hunting goes on. So in Canada, hunting's a massive thing. So lots and lots of people have got rifles and shotguns. I think it's the same in Norway. Most people have got a gun because huntings are just a massive part of the culture. They don't go around shooting each other all that much.
But we will
compared to
never
other
know
places.
why.
Yeah, right.
Literally, it cannot be found.
It's impossible to understand.
I mean,
Why?
Being there, having been there once before, I will say the Icelandic people are all the friendliest people that you could ever meet. They'll do anything for you on the street. They're absolutely lovely. Can't explain why. Nothing to it. If you just dropped, a random Somalian, they'd obviously just straight away adapt.
It's particularly inexplicable considering white people are sort of inherently dangerous and racist and violent. I was given to understand that. It's particularly odd. That Iceland...
Very, very strange.
But there we are. I'll end that there.
Hello. You should go to the website because me and Harry have produced a video finally talking about the ideas of Sigmund Freud. I'm critical of some of them. Some of them are actually very good. So come and check out which ones we approve of, which ones we don't, for as little as £5 a month.
If you appreciated that episode from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, you can go to lotuseaters.com to get access to all the premium content that's on the site, such as the Brokenomics series, this episode on Islam with Robert Spencer. If you'd like to find out what else is being put out, you can follow on Twitter at lotuseaters_com on Twitter. Thank you and goodbye.